맛을 아시나요? Join us on our journey as we uncover where these most peculiar and interesting gourmets come from around the world with our one and only Chef Matt in the studio on 맛대 맛. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. It feels like no time has passed since I was last here.
그러니까요. I don't know if it's because the summer months just I don't know, hits you differently. 저 같은 경우는 시간이 엄청 많이 빨리 가는 것 같아요.
네, 맞아요.
Yeah, compared to other people or other dates. But hopefully you guys are beating the heat with some good air conditioning, some good dinner as we give you some entertainment for today. 자, 오늘의 question은 뭘까요? What's our topic? Maybe I should ask.
So our topic today, if you caught our episode last week, we talked about spicy foods. So we're going to talk about spices this week. So not just 매운맛. We're talking about 약간 향기스러운, those parts of those fragrant parts of cuisine that aren't necessarily just spicy.
No, I mean, I love 향신료s, these spices. I recently went to an 인도 식당을 최근에 가봤는데요. 저번 주에 갔는데 너무 맛있는 거예요. 건대 하나 있었는데 이제 한남으로 이사 갔거든요. 근데 거기서 갔는데 약간 리브랜딩을 했어요. 조금 더 고급스러운 럭셔리한 메뉴도 조금 바꿨는데요. I've never tasted curry leaves before.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
너무 색다른 맛이더라고요.
맞아요.
카레랑 그 카리 잎이라고 해야 되나요? 그게 너무 다른 맛이더라고요.
맞아요. 고소하고 and they're slightly nutty and they're very fragrant. So they're called curry leaves because they taste like curry powder, which is not the only powder used for curry. It's very complicated. We'll actually get into it a little bit later.
Okay, exciting.
The whole like distinguishing all the different words that curry can mean.
Oh, okay. Yeah, lots to learn about, especially or only with curry, I'm assuming, because it's just so different around the world. But in any case, so we're talking about 향신료, which is spices, which brings us to our first question.
That's right. And the question is, where is the world's most expensive spice from?
Ooh, you should have also asked what is it.
Well, I'm gonna ask you that, see if you know it, but I'll tell you what it is. But
okay. I'm gonna guess. I'm just gonna guess because it's India. 인도도 향신료가 유명하기 때문에 인도라고 생각하고 있거든요. But I mean, who knows? There's spices all around the world. It could be like in the Himalayan mountains,
Sure.
someplace that's hard to find as well.
It absolutely could be. It's not, but it absolutely could be.
It can be. So 세상에서 가장 비싼 향신료는 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
What do you think it is?
I think I've heard a lot about saffron, I think.
Ding dong. There you go. You are correct. Do you know what saffron is, though?
I've just seen pictures of like this red leafy, like spiky leafy. Is it spiky? I'm not sure. But then it turns rice yellow.
That's right. Yeah. So it's red. It is kind of spicy, but it's more like a shear. It's like a little thread. And it's part of a flour. So let's talk about what spices are. So spices like saffron can be part of a flour. The definition, the wiki definition is a seed, fruit, root, bark, or other plant substance primarily used for flavoring or coloring food. Spices are distinguished from herbs, which are the leaves, flowers, stems, or plants used for flavoring or garnish. So English distinguishes between herbs and spices. 그 허브랑 스파이스를 구분해요, 영어로. So here it says flowers, but it's a little tricky because parts of flowers can be spices. 예를 들면, so the what is it? The saffron is just a part of the flower, not the whole flower. An example of a herb that is a whole flower would be like lavender. Lavender is considered to be an herb.
Is it?
Yeah, but in Korean it'd be considered to be a spice. Hops as well, part of beer. Technically an herb, it's kind of a tricky one. I think hops are just kind of hops, but when used in food, it's kind of treated more as an herb, whereas it's a whole flowering part of the spice. Now, in Korean, the definition of 향신료 is a little bit different from that of spice in English.
그러면 나라별로 이 향신료가 뭔지 구분하는 게 다르군요.
Right. It's kind of like what we talked about fruit versus vegetable.
Okay.
There is no biological term for spice. It is completely a cultural thing. What we consider to be a spice. Oh, this feels like a spice, therefore we call it a spice.
Right.
In Korean, the definition, the broadest like wiki definition I found was 향기와 매운맛이 있는 식재료 말한다. So it specifies that it has a spicy flavor to it.
Yeah, I think that's how I kind of define what a spice is. Or when I think about spices, I think of 약간의 매콤한 맛이 있어야
Sure.
그게 향신료가 되지 않을까.
And last week we talked about different types of spiciness. There is like the gochu sort of spiciness, but there's also a black pepper sort of spiciness.
Right.
And a gyeoja sort of spiciness as well. What's interesting is that things like 참깨 is considered a 향신료.
아, 그래요?
고추, which is, I think, a pretty universal. I think,
Sure.
that is probably the one thing that all cultures can agree on.
We
that
agree.
마늘 and 파, though, are considered spices, a 향신료.
마늘 이해하는데 파까지.
Yeah, but in English, we would not consider those spices.
Yeah.
The term that we most often use is, aromatic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so onions, garlic,
Right.
vegetable, ginger falls under aromatics as well.
근데 한국 같은 경우에는 많은 국 요리에 마늘이랑 파 얹어 놓잖아요. I
Right,
use
right.
as garnish, so maybe that's a cultural thing.
And I think because like when you say 향신료, right? Like, the thing to keep in mind is that word 향, right? Is like to give something fragrance.
Right.
Whereas spice doesn't necessarily have that connotation built
Yeah,
in.
you're right.
And almost always spices in English are dried.
맞아요.
Whereas in Korean, 향신료 can be fresh.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there are subtle differences between country to country from the US or Western countries compared to places like here in Korea, like sesame seeds.
Yeah,
참깨.
which is technically, I guess, fills all the definition of a spice, but is not something an English speaker would call necessarily a spice.
Right. I mean, we don't even use sesame seeds to garnish things or add flavor to Western food anyway.
Bagel is the one thing I can think of.
Well, I mean, that is a garnish
But
flavor.
you wouldn't call it a
spice.
spiced bagel, right? You would call it just a sesame bagel.
That's true. All right. Well, let's get to some interesting pairings. I think it was yesterday. There was a listener that messaged in and saying, "Ooh, I really like this pepper snack because it goes with my mekju, with my beer." And I thought, does that really go well together?
Apparently it does. Not only do peppery snacks go well with beer, lately there's been a small kind of micro trend known as 후추 맥주. So it's pepper directly sprinkled on top of beer. So recently beer, so like mass market beer, not like craft beer, not like 수제 맥주,
Okay.
but just like the regular beers that 90% of beer that consumed is, has a little bit of 순후추, so that kind of the 후추 that is pre-ground in the 통.
진짜요?
Yeah. So you just sprinkle a little bit on the foam head, on the 거품, and it's been kind of making its round along social media.
Oh.
And I think, it's not a huge trend, so I haven't been able to track it. But in my half an hour or so of online sleuthing, I was able to kind of determine that it showed up on a TV show.
Okay.
And so it showed up along 더치 맥주, which is 더치 커피 플러스 맥주. Which has kind of been a thing. Like they'll mix like iced coffee and soju,
Okay.
and that's been around for a while. But with beer, it's been kind of a new thing. And 생크림 맥주, so whipped cream and beer, which also
I
has
could
been
see
around,
that.
a little bit long because it's got a head already,
Yeah,
right? It's got
right.
foam. So one netizen, the comment that she wrote after she tasted it, she said, 이국적인 느낌도 나고 재미 삼아 한번 마셔보기 좋은 것 같아요. So it has kind of an exotic flavor to it.
Interesting. Yeah, we're looking at a photo right now. I mean, 진짜 경험, 재미 삼아. You know, you just want to try it. It's just experimental. 한 번쯤 궁금하기 때문에. I think like when chocolate or ice cream had its rounds with salt.
Right.
그런
right.
느낌이지 않을까 싶은데요.
Sure, and it's an easy thing to try, right? You have almost nothing to lose at this point.
And it's quite cheap. You have the ingredients at home, or you can easily get it at a convenience store. So
Yeah, so this is something that a lot of people do at home, but it's also something that a few cafes have taken to as well. Because again, most cafes will generally have these two things on hand if they sell beer.
Yeah, that is true. 후추, 맥주, who would have thunk?
Yeah. So other common spices we use in Korea, 향신료, 고춧가루, of course. We talked about like that. Chilies being kind of the universal one. 참깨, we mentioned also, which is kind of unusual that Korea considers that. But I think when you ask most people about 향신료, the first thing that comes to mind is 고수.
맞아요.
Right.
Yeah, because it's such a 호불호, and it's because it's so strong.
Right.
That if you say, "Oh, do you like 고수?" They say, "Oh, I don't like 향신료." It's like the same word.
Well, because oftentimes, they'll use as a shorthand, like 향신료 좀 빼주세요. That is kind of a shorthand for saying, please take out the cilantro.
Right.
Or please leave off the cilantro.
I'll take theirs.
Yeah.
I'll be like, 그 사람의 뺀 거 저한테 추가해주세요.
That's right. No, absolutely. We do the same as well. And what's interesting is that, like, kind of also other fragrant leaves, like 깻잎 as well.
Yes.
Because a lot of 깻잎 is also one of those things where it's like, 어른이 되면은, if you don't like it as a kid, like 어른이 되면은 먹게 되는 거야.
Yeah.
Like you like a lot. It's like if you don't like it as a kid, I didn't like it as a kid.
저도요.
Yeah, it was too strong for me.
맞아요. And now, all of a sudden, I was like, in one day, I just started craving it.
Same. That's exactly the same thing that happened to me.
한꺼번에 그냥 하루에 먹고 싶어가지고 먹었는데 너무 맛있는 거예요.
That's right.
It's an acquired taste, as they say.
There's also a common one is 계피. Cinnamon. And there's a whole thing like, cinnamon versus cassia. So kepi is not technically cinnamon. Like what cinnamon is a very specific thing. But kepi is one that we use often in Korea. 수정과 being, I think, the most kind of like 대표적인 like cinnamon flavored thing that we have in Korea.
Right.
But is also an important part of 오향.
Oh, what is 오향?
So 오향 is a combination of 후추, black pepper, kepi, 팔각, 정향, and 회향, which all translates to pepper, cinnamon, star anise, clove, and fennel.
I see.
And you've had this.
I have?
족발.
Oh.
It is the main spice that is used in 족발.
I see.
And when you see like like Chinese cuisine or like kind of like global fusion cuisine, when you see Chinese five spice, this is five spice.
I see.
오향.
Right.
Yeah, 오향, 5 spices.
No wonder. 족발이 약간 향이 강해요.
Yes. And
Yeah.
they do that because, it is a very porky part of the pig.
Sure.
And, so they do that so that, that kind of like 고기 비린 맛을 조금 죽이기
Right.
위해서. So it's to kind of get rid of the pigginess of the cut just a little bit.
Fair enough. They did a great job.
And it pairs beautifully well.
Yeah. And then you pair that with 새우젓갈. I mean, you got yourself a late night snack.
Absolutely. And it's slightly different from Chinese five spice, which uses 조피 or 산초 instead of black pepper. But the final thing, just because the cinnamon and star anise are kind of like the strongest flavors in this mix, it still, by and large, tastes very, very similar.
Yeah, I think people use this mix when they make 보쌈 as well.
Yes, they do. And they also use our next spice on the list, which is 월계수 or 월계수.
월계수?
You know it better as bay leaf.
All right.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there who think that bay leaf doesn't do anything. How this is one one leaf? I'll tell you this: if you ever make like 월남 쌀 or
Right.
like any kind of long grain rice, if you'll use it for like Mexican rice as well. If you put a bay leaf in there, you can definitely taste.
Can you?
You absolutely can.
Because I've grew up with this type of flavor before, and people just say, "Oh, put a bay leaf in there," and I'm like with Hainanese chicken rice, or like a pandan leaf or a bay leaf, and I put it in, and it didn't really add much, or I couldn't really tell, and I thought maybe it's an expired, leaf. I couldn't tell so much, but I have to try it again.
It's one of those things where it's like, I think it's kind of like bass in music. You don't necessarily notice it, but if it's not there, you'll
Good.
notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You notice the absence of it. Well, in any case, I would say spice is definitely an important part of our food. I mean, life would be boring without the spices, the 향신료s. So that's why we have the question, 세상에서 가장 비싼 향신료는 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
That's right. And we've determined that the spice is saffron.
Saffron
And
indeed.
where is the world's most expensive spice from? I'll tell you this. It comes from a lot of different countries. There's one that produces most of it, but we will accept any answer. If it's a
좋습니다.
saffron producing country, we'll accept that answer.
Let us know. 샵 1013 단문 50원 장문 100원입니다. Send us in your guesses, your answers. We'd love to know anything regarding spices. Your favorite, your least favorite. Once again, text in. Here is Espa with Spicy. Espa with Spicy. Here we are talking about the 향신료s, the spices that give us spice in our lives. With the question, 세상에서 가장 비싼 향신료는 과연 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
That's right. Where is saffron, the world's most expensive spice, from?
I've had saffron tea before. Very tasty. Very 은은해. Saffron, I guess, can be used in various ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It has a very unusual flavor. It's slightly floral. It's very buttery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very buttery. It gives
Spice
a
good with rice.
richness, and I yes, like saffron rice. If it's on the menu, I'll always always try to order some.
Yeah. People, I mean, they will buy in bulk and then store them in safes. Like, that's how, 그만큼 귀하다고 들었어요. Like, 금값보다.
킬로그램으로 봤을 때, yeah, it is more expensive than gold. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you think about like how much saffron it would take
Right.
to make up a kilogram. It's one of the reasons why it's so expensive is that it's harvested by hand.
Oh.
You basically it's the little stamens, it's the little bits inside the flower that are
Okay.
picked and then they're dried and they're cured. It's incredibly labor intensive, and it's one of the reasons why it's so expensive. Oftentimes, too, it's also a spice that is often counterfeited.
Oh, really?
And we will get into some of these spice crimes in the next half of the show. But
Spice
it
crimes.
happens, and it's crazy.
Wow. Well, in any case, we are getting a disclaimer here. 8시 현재도 전국 대부분의 폭염 경보 발효 중이어서 물 많이 섭취하시고요. 야외 활동 자제해 주시고 probably best not to eat the most spicy foods, especially in this super hot weather. So 조금 자제하시고 조금 참으시고, and then maybe you're able to eat some in the air conditioning. 매운 것도 이런 더위에 먹어줘야 조금 재미있지 않을까요?
I will recommend this. There are definitely people out there who don't drink enough water. So maybe we should encourage those people to eat more spicy foods so that they will drink more water.
맞아요. 매운 거를 먹어야 이래 물을 더 섭취할 수 있기 때문에 좋은 팁이 될 수 있겠네요. It's good advice we're given. All right, well, let's get to it. We're talking about spices. Here in Korea, it's very different to, let's say, places in Europe.
Right. In Europe, it's not a country that you necessarily, or not a region that you necessarily associate with a lot of spices.
Right.
And I think of all of them, I think Germany is one that you would not really associate with spice, but they actually consume a fair amount of spices. I want to highlight two dishes from Germany that are very spice heavy that you wouldn't necessarily think that they were German, but they are very, very German in origin. So there is the Feuerzangenbowle.
Yes.
It literally means like fire tongs bowl. So 불집게 그릇. So, right. And the reason why, so it starts with glühwein, which you might know as vangsho.
Right.
Or in Korean, pangsho. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of this.
Is it because it's warm wine or is it because of the spices?
Both. So I'm actually not a fan of sujungwa as well. So I don't really like that kind of intense cinnamony flavor in things that aren't creamy.
Sure.
So like cinnamon hot chocolate, devour it.
Like a cinnamon bun.
Yeah, and a cinnamon bun. Oh my gosh, I love it. But in wine, I don't know.
Like in a straight liquid, right? Like I get what you mean.
Yeah, and it's often very sweet too.
I like cinnamon gum. My wife thinks I'm a pervert for liking cinnamon gum. Like there's something wrong with your brain for liking cinnamon gum. I like it, but it's very 호불호. I think cinnamon, like you said, if it's something creamy and decadent, I think universally loved.
Right.
Horchata, for example, I think is one that a lot of people like.
Horchata, I'm not a fan.
Oh, interesting. Because I think horchata does have that thing though where it is waterier than it looks.
Yes, that's true.
It's not as creamy as you think it's going to be.
And it's just a liquidified churro. So I'm drinking too much sugar, I feel
That's true. Like, yeah, if you have a churro, it's crispy and fatty
Yeah.
and it's got the extra sugar.
You get the texture.
Right. But Wangshou or Glühwein, if you've never had it, it's like a warm wine that's drank, especially around the Christmas holiday times in all throughout Europe. It's warm red wine, oftentimes with some kind of citrus and then clove and cinnamon in there.
유럽 같은 경우에는 크리스마스 때, 겨울 때 이런 향신료를 많이 쓰는 것 같아요. So like Guangzhou or Glühwein, but also like fruit cakes.
Fruit cakes, gingerbread cookies.
Yes.
All these things are very much, they have like that kind of like European Christmassy influence to it.
Right.
A lot of European dishes that you might not necessarily imagine having spices in there also have spices. For example, bechamel sauce. So that French style cream sauce often has nutmeg in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. And you don't really taste it, but it makes the cream taste richer as a result.
You know, I can't really tell what the flavor of nutmeg is just because we always use it with either vanilla or cinnamon. I never use it by itself, you know what I mean? So if I use it in like a cookie recipe,
Sure.
I'll add it. Don't know really what I'm adding to it.
Nutmeg very much is like the 월계수잎 of like warming spices.
Right.
It does provide that base layer. It's not nearly as floral as cinnamon is. And it's
깊은
not,
맛?
yeah, it's kind of like it just adds like a base warmth, like
The comfort.
yeah, that adds a comfort
right.
aspect to it.
Here's an interesting example. Currywurst.
Currywurst, have you ever had it?
I have.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's delightful. It's like a really really nice kind of like street snack.
Yep.
And it started in the streets. So traditionally, Germany was very similar to Korea. And I've always said this about Korea. We're not a street food culture. We're a market food culture. And they took that kind of to the extreme where it was basically turned into law in certain regions. Food was eaten according to fixed rules at fixed times and at home. According to one quote, it was considered indecent to trot through the countryside and munch on something.
In Germany.
In Germany. And so this was kind of culture, and even in certain regions it was kind of codified into law. I think it's one of those laws where you can't look a horse in the eyes after 9 p.m. I think it was one of those laws that wasn't really enforced. No one went to jail for any of this.
Okay, because I can't imagine this because like in the States, you're not allowed to drink outdoors, in public places. It's a sign of public indecency and things like that.
I imagine if it was ever cracked down, it was cracked down more on vendors than the people eating.
Oh, okay.
But after the Second World War, everything kind of changed where they kind of implemented what they would call the rubble stalls. So people were encouraged to kind of create these small businesses, these little stalls where they can sell food for cheap. It can be an easy business that someone can set up, and it can be easy, cheap food for someone to pick up and consume. All part of this kind of reconstruction effort. So currywurst started in 1949. It's basically sausages with like a ketchup that's spiked with curry powder.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, we are running out of time, and so we quickly need to get to our answer. But currywurst, again, lots to do with curry. We'll get to that in just a bit. But before we leave, 세상에서 가장 비싼 향신료는 과연 어느 나라에서 왔을까요?
That's right, saffron, the world's most expensive spice. Where is it from?
Drum roll, please.
Iran produces 80% of the world's saffron. It grows everywhere, basically from Spain to India, but 80% of it comes from Iran.
Wow, Iran. I thought also maybe like Turkey.
I think they do. Like I said, it comes from an orchid that grows all along the Mediterranean, all the way to India, but Iran, 80% of it comes from there.
Well, there you go. Congratulations if you got it right. Stick around. More talk about spices coming up. Welcome back to Mat and Mat as we uncover all these peculiar stories and gourmets as they travel all around the world with our one and only Chef Matt in the studio. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
We're talking about spices from all around the world and how each country kind of differs when it comes to the definition of 향신료. For example, Korea is very different and would categorize chamke, sesame seeds, into 향신료 spices. On the other hand, the U.S. would probably say it's just seeds, right? A snack.
I feel like I think in the U.S., sesame seed is probably closer to a peanut than it is,
right.
than it is a
Nuts
spice.
and seeds?
Yeah, and we got a message in earlier that we didn't get to read, but someone mentioned a bread from, I think, Turkey that has sesame seeds all coated all over it. It looks very much like a bagel, but it's much lighter and crispier. And there are a couple places in Korea that sell it. It's really, really good if you ever get a chance to. It's kind of like a cross almost between like a bagel and a light baguette.
Oh, okay. Getting in another message. 4481님께서는 향신료는 양념과 다른 걸까요?
Yes. Yeah, so I think like yangnyeom would be like a seasoning.
A marinade?
Yeah, so yangnyeom.
Oh, seasoning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's
a
right.
seasoning, right? So like
Seasoned
I feel
powder.
like 향신료 can be I think one good thing that kind of overlaps between the two of them, right? 겨자.
겨자.
I feel like mustard as a powder or as a seed is a 향신료, but you can turn that into a yangnyeom, like if you turn that into a sauce.
So is it, okay, what if we say 향신료 is like a particular ingredient and then 양념 is a mixture of those spices? Because it's a
I think
seasoning?
off the top of my head, I feel like I can't think of a single ingredient yangnyeom out there that would kind of fall under. We'll have to give this a think. And I
Yeah.
think, but yangnyeom is definitely a broader term.
It's a head scratcher.
because it uses things that aren't spices.
That's
like
true.
for example, right? Like in a yangnyeomjang, for example, like you have the chang part of it, like soy sauce, but no one would consider soy sauce to be a spice. It does include a lot of 향신료 in there, like 고춧가루 and like whole gochu and maner and whatnot. But yeah, that's an interesting one.
Here you go. I mean, spice, you think it's a simple topic, but the deeper you get into it, the more questions we have. We want to get down to the nitty gritty. All right, so we talked about saffron being the most expensive and finding out that Iran is the most, or I guess where is the place that they export it the most?
Yes.
All right, let's get to our second question then.
That's right. Where is the world's second most expensive spice from?
그럼 두 번째로, 세상에서 두 번째로 비싼 향신료는 과연 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
That's right. And when we talk about this one, this is definitely one that most people don't consider when they think about spices, but it fits all the definitions of what a spice is, and that's vanilla.
와, 진짜 의외네요.
Yeah, vanilla is a spice. It fits all the definitions, right? So let's go back to our definition. It's a seed. Vanilla is a seed pod. It's from a plant, primarily used for flavoring food. Boom.
There you go.
It ticks all the boxes. I think it doesn't necessarily fall into the spice category because it's primarily used just for sweet foods. And almost every other spice kind of either is used for savory food or sweet and savory food.
Yeah, I remember kind of experimenting with vanilla a lot. And my brother and I were talking about it, and he was saying, vanilla is not naturally sweet.
No.
We always add sugar or some sort of sweetener to vanilla products. And so we think vanilla ice cream, of course, vanilla is sweet. We add it to coffee creamers and all these desserts. And so we think it's a sweet ingredient. But 사실 조금, it's quite bitter.
Yes, just like chocolate. If you have it without sugar, it's quite bitter. And it's one of those things too. We basically like chocolate without vanilla in it tastes less like chocolate. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. And we use it in English like as a term for being something kind of boring and mediocre.
Yeah.
But it is so like if you've had like a good vanilla pod before, it's so complex and floral. And
I love vanilla.
I love vanilla. I love vanilla ice cream.
It's
A
the
really
best.
good vanilla ice cream is something to behold, and it's expensive. Like we said, if you're buying fresh here in Korea, you can get like an A-cup like high quality pod can cost upwards of 10,000won per vanilla pod.
Oh, wow.
A liter of high quality extract can cost over 20,000won, so about $200 for a liter of high quality extract, and by weight it costs more than silver.
Wow. So again, I mean, it just goes to show how precious these spices are around the world. For us, maybe we may not think of it as worthy because we don't use it in Korean cuisines as much, but we wouldn't have, as you said, vanilla ice cream without vanilla.
Right. And if you are a baker, and there are many bakers here in Korea, you will definitely know how expensive and important vanilla is. I think
yeah.
that's one of the first things you learn once you start baking. Is like, oh my goodness, vanilla goes in everything, and it's so expensive.
맞아요. And there's like different, like there's vanilla extract, there's the vanilla bean pod where you scrape it out.
Yep, you scrape it out. It's
And
like
then
caviar.
and then there's the powder form as
Yep.
well.
There's powder, there's paste, there's all forms of vanilla. In fact, if you look up vanilla, like vanilla bean on the big search engine here in Korea, one of the things that will pop up will be vanilla bean 싸게 사는 법.
Oh, yeah. People need to
Yep.
buy their vanilla. All right. Well, vanilla, I guess it has a long history as well.
That's right. It's so expensive, just like saffron, because it's very intensive. It's again kind of like saffron. It's part of a flower. It's part of the orchid family, and they need to be pollinated by hand, and that's why it's so expensive. You can't do this with a machine. And in fact, they even figuring out how to pollinate it by hand took a long time. It took centuries to figure this out.
Wow.
And it was kind of like almost as important as any other kind of like big culinary like breakthrough, because it's one of those things, right? Just like we've seen with many other things, it's very expensive and limited to the super rich at first, and until they could figure
Right.
out how to make it more readily, then afterwards it becomes more available to everyday people, and it's still expensive.
Still expensive, but it's so good that people are willing to pay for it, right?
Not just pay for it, they're willing to steal it.
Ah.
So one of the reasons why vanilla is so expensive is because they have to account for how much gets stolen.
Wow. It's like cheese.
It's like
There's like cheese crimes too.
Cheese is the number one stolen food in the world.
진짜요.
But vanilla is also highly stolen. It happens on every level. It happens from on the farm level to the export level, but
Wow.
mostly on the farm level. And it's because vanilla harvests are incredibly lucrative. One harvest can be up to 10 times the average local income.
Whoa.
Like one vanilla farmer saying like one harvest pays for all 4 of my daughters is like university education for a year.
Really? So how many harvests do you get in
One harvest
one
per year.
Okay.
So one per year. And so as a result, there's also local corruption. Police take their cut. Vanilla is used in money laundering.
It's like are there cartels?
There are. I don't think they're cartels. So I don't think it's like avocado or olive oil.
Okay.
I think, I think there's also, just like saffron, so we'll accept many answers. Vanilla grows in different places, but one country is responsible for 80% of it.
Wow. Interesting. All right. I mean, lots to talk about vanilla and so much more, even when it comes to crime as well. So our second question being, 세상에서 두 번째로 비싼 향신료는 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
That's right. Where is vanilla, the world's second most expensive spice, from?
Chip in the conversation. Let us know what you think. Do you like vanilla or not? And send us in your guesses and answers as well. 샵 1013, 단문 50원, 장문 100원 보내주시길 바랍니다. Here's Take That, Once You've Tasted Love. Once you tasted love, the spices, the vanilla, you can't go back. Talking about 세상에서 두 번째로 비싼 향신료는 과연 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
That's right. Where is the world's second most expensive spice from? And you know what? Love might taste like vanilla.
Yeah. Warm, sometimes bitter.
And sometimes sweet.
There you go. It's got a little bit of everything. All right, so we talked about even the crime that goes behind these harvests of spices, especially with vanilla, because it's, as you said, quite lucrative.
Yeah, so let's talk about some more spice crimes.
좋아요. 재밌어요.
Yeah. Well, where there's money to be made, there is crime. And the EU goes as far as to use the following methods to authenticate spices, because for as long as there's been a spice trade, people have been trying to make fake spices. They use DNA analysis, isotropic techniques, mass spectrometry, spectroscopy, chemometrics, and a combination of these detection methods.
Oh my gosh.
We talked before about fake saffron, right? People make fake saffron because they basically just take like a small little like thread, and they dip it in a little bit of yellow dye.
And that's it?
And that's it. Like, and oftentimes it'll be that they'll just kind of adulterate. They'll mix in a little bit of the fake spice to bulk it up by weight.
Oh, okay. I see. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like for these people who do, fake things and copies and things like that, it just seems like a lot more work.
Sure.
Than to just make the real thing.
I feel like there's just some people who always want to get ahead. There's an ingredient that we use a lot in Korea. Do you know chija?
No.
So chija, it comes from a flower. I think it's mostly often translated to Cape jasmine.
Oh.
Often used as tea, but also used as a natural dye.
Chicha, okay.
It's red and it produces a yellow color. So that's something that they'll also use to make fake saffron out of.
Interesting. Yeah, well, it seems like, if you say that it's more expensive than gold when it's weighed by kilogram, then...
If you can make fake gold, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So in 2021, the European Commission published an EU-wide survey revealing this kind of survey of fake spices. So they focused on cumin, curcuma, oregano, paprika / chili, black pepper, and saffron. Turns out oregano was the most vulnerable product, which is interesting because it's not a very expensive spice.
So why do people...
herb.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's easy to. I think it's because oregano is so fragrant that you could bulk it up and you can't really tell the difference. You can just add some other leaf. Because oregano, just a little bit goes a very long way. So I feel like if I dilute it by 10%, no one's going to tell the difference.
I see.
That's my theory.
I'm now a little paranoid with the spices that I have in my cupboard. I want to check it all, but how would I check it?
Well, you're not the only one. They're going so far as to use the blockchain now to kind of authenticate and to keep track of how authentic their spices are. But yeah, I think there is a very good chance that at least some of us have some form of fake spice in our cupboards.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole like counterfeit thing, right? We almost as if that we don't also want to believe it as well. Some people are like, well, no, it's not me.
Right.
But then when you think about like, have you seen olive oil documentaries?
Sure.
Avocado oil documentaries? Like those things. Everything that we have in our cupboards could just all be fake.
Yeah.
And petroleum.
And
not even edible.
And we would never know.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, you might be having illegal cheese and not even know it.
Oh, wow.
You had mentioned cheese before as something being stolen. It is, in 2011, Time reported that the world's most shoplifted food product was cheese, with 4% of the entire world's cheese supply having been stolen at one point. And part of it is that it's easy to steal because cheese is pretty expensive, especially like nicer cheeses, but like you have larger scale cheese heists.
Yes.
Yeah. And
it's not like 편의점에서 돈이 없어서 훔치는 게 아니라.
Right.
These are like truckloads being
Sure.
stolen, and I've seen news articles with
Yeah,
that.
and it's because like unlike things like alcohol and whatnot, they're not tagged, and they're not, and each piece of cheese doesn't have its own serial number. Although some do, like Parmigiano Reggiano, for example, they have like the kind of like imprint on the side to say that it's authentic. But yes, like sliced cheese, a lot of it gets sold kind of in the back of a restaurant because cheese is expensive, and some restaurants, they have some connections and they're looking to cut their costs where they can.
There you go.
Might have had illegal cheese.
Well, I mean, whether you have it or not, it's still pretty tasty, and I can't stop eating cheese because I might be a criminal for doing so. But also nuts have been a huge...
경과류, yes, nuts. It's so prevalent that there's an entire wiki entry just for California nut crimes, specifically California.
What's the number one?
Almonds.
Almonds.
So California produces 80% of the world's almonds and 99% of America's almonds.
Oh, okay.
Also the world's second largest producer of pistachios and walnuts. Think about it this way. The nut industry in California alone is $9 billion a year.
Yeah, nuts are pretty expensive too.
Yeah, they are very expensive, especially if you there are a lot of people who go on a diet. It's like, oh, I want to buy some nuts, like a healthy snack, and then they look, say, oh my,
it's expensive.
Like a month's worth of nuts can be up to $100 if you're eating them every day.
Yeah, that is true. If you buy those daily nuts too, and they're all different quality as well.
Sure.
So if you want the nicer ones that aren't mixed with, M&Ms and too many raisins, then, the real deal can be like 2만 원 per bag.
Yeah, and you feel like you don't get that much either.
Yeah,
too, right?
맞아요.
But it's because they take so much work to grow. As a matter of fact, the California almond industry gets routinely criticized because it takes so much water to grow almonds.
Yes, right. Yeah, and for those almonds to be, shipped out to make almond milk and all those types of things.
And what's crazy is that nut crimes are considered to be a very sophisticated crime because it's not going into a shop and putting walnuts in your pocket. And it's not gang members rolling up and, pointing guns and give me your nuts.
Right.
No, this happens using fraud, without any violence or damage.
Yeah.
Methods used involving fake trucks, scouting, fake paperwork, going to the U.S. Department of Transportation and kind of committing fraud on this federal level. And so,
honestly, doesn't it sound like a headache just doing it?
You have to have this weird kind of confluence of both intense knowledge of cybercrime and understanding the way interstate commerce happens while also having a desire to steal.
Yeah.
I feared these people more than I feared any other kind of violent crimes. Who knows what they would move on to.
Yeah. You got to be super smart, super connected as well.
Right. These sorts of people, I feel like they could drain my bank account like that if they ever wanted to.
Well, in any case, enough about the crimes, but we are talking about the second most expensive spice. 세상에서 두 번째로 비싼 향신료는 과연 어느 나라에서 온 걸까요?
That's right. Where is vanilla, the world's second most expensive spice, from?
Drumroll, please.
I hope you like to move it because it comes from Madagascar.
Oh, that's right.
Madagascar vanilla.
Yeah. 그러네요. Oh my gosh.
Mexico, Tahiti are also known for the vanilla, but Madagascar produces 80% of the world's vanilla.
Well, we're getting in a message. 파주 챔프 영웅님께서는 푸니타님 저 6월 20일 선물 당첨됐는데 아직도 선물 안 왔어요. 어떻게 된 거죠? 가족 친구들한테 자랑하고 다녔는데 속상해요. 우우라고 보내주셨는데 샵 1013 문자로 보내주시면 확인해 드리겠습니다. Thank you for your messages once again. And of course, Chef Matt, thank you for a good time. 덕분에 너무 즐거운 시간을 보냈습니다. We'll have to see you again next week.
See you then.
We'll leave you guys with our last song. 오늘의 마지막 곡을 들려드리겠습니다. NCT Dream의 ISTJ인데요. Do you actually know your what is it called? MBTI?
ENFJ.
Oh, you're
ENTP? No. It's all I know is it's the same as my wife's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. ENTP? ENFJ?
You're the opposite of me.
Yeah.
I am INTP. INF. I also don't remember. Well, in any case, PD님께서 ESPN까지 나왔는데요. CNN 여러 가지가 있겠죠. In any case, NCT Dream, ISTJ, here is 6916님의 신청곡 바로 들려드리겠습니다. Have a great night and we'll see you tomorrow. 여러분, 내일 봬요.